In recent times, if you wanted a no-holds-barred, top-tier experience iPhone with the absolute best of what Apple had for consumers in that particular year, you'd pick up the Pro or the Pro Max iPhone with the best cameras, the best displays, and the best performance. That holds true this year as well, with several welcome upgrades that only serve to reinforce the best iPhone money can buy recommendation that accompanies the Pro Max. And one upgrade I didn't know I needed, but I've grown to love. I'm Tushar Kanwar, and this is my review of the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Unsurprisingly, the iPhone 14 Pro Max comes at a cost, a starting price of Rs 1,39,900 no less for the base 128GB variant in space black, silver, gold, deep purple color that I have on hand here. The iPhone 14 Pro maintains feature parity with the bigger model and differs only in terms of a smaller 6.1-inch display, a smaller battery, and a more compact form factor. So everything I say about the Pro Max holds true for the iPhone 14 Pro as well. Whichever model you choose, if you can stomach the high price of admission and the heft associated with every iPhone 14 Pro Max, this year's models go the distance, even as they remain overkill for most folks who would be better served with the regular iPhone 14 lineup. It seems the story of the year, be it Samsung's foldables or the new iPhone 14 Pros, one of refinement and somewhat of a lack of adventure when it comes to making bold design choices. The iPhone 14 Pro Max follows the same tried and tested design language as the 13 Pro Max and the 12 Pro Max that preceded it. That said, the feel in the hand is luxurious to say the least. Everything screams high quality, and the button response and haptic feedback are second to none. It's still wallet stretching, both in terms of dimension and pricing. And while affordability is very relative, there's no getting around the fact that this is a very massive, heavy phone. Now, if you simply wanted a big screen iPhone has the iPhone 14 Plus on offer this year. But there are a couple of big benefits of going the Pro Max way. The Pro Max clearly has the more expansive 6.7-inch 2796 by 1290 pixel OLED display. And like the Pro, the display is top of the shelf. Only this time, the screen can amp up to 2000 nits of peak outdoor brightness, which translates to excellent outdoor visibility. As with the 13 Pros, you get the smoother 120Hz ProMotion refresh rate for those buttery smooth animations across the interface. What's new this year is the inclusion of the long overdue always-on display feature. Take any Android. The always-on display typically darkens the screen and uses icons to differentiate or indicate any new notifications that deserve your attention. Apple's gone and done it differently. Apple uses a new 1Hz capable LTPO display to conserve battery and follows it up by dimming the display ever so slightly so that your lock screen wallpaper and widgets are still glanceable. An always-on approach Apple Watch owners will find rather familiar. I have to admit though, Apple's always-on display is the most visually pleasing always-on display I've ever seen. Very Apple. Late to the game, but slick as it gets. Now, if you're coming to the iPhone 14 Pros from a previous iPhone, seeing the screen lit up somewhat would have you believe that there's always a new notification, even if there wasn't. And it's a feeling you have to shake off over the first few weeks of using the device. Well, at least the always-on display turns off when you place the phone in a pocket or when low power or sleep mode is active, or when you move a certain distance away from a connected Apple Watch. There is unsurprisingly an impact on battery life, depending on how much you pocket the phone or how much ambient light you have around. And you're going to have to weigh the trade-offs, particularly when you're out and about. Gone is the notch too, and not in the way many had hoped. In its place, you get the dynamic island, Apple's interactive pill-shaped replacement for the notch. Listening to music or running a timer? Swipe up to go home, and your music app or clock app floats into the dynamic island to show the album artwork or a separate blob showing the countdown timer. The island expands to show you who's calling, when your AirPods connect, Apple Maps directions, charging alerts, when your wireless hotspot is active, and so on. Tapping these icons open up the app, while long pressing them open up a widget. In a sense, you're using the persistent second display to multitask between open apps. Over and above iOS's already existent multitasking capabilities, which we haven't seen a huge upgrade on iPhones for a while. Not to mention, it has an alive, playful characteristic about it that's inviting and oh so Apple. Kudos to Apple for making what is otherwise a boring camera cutout interact with software so fluidly. Little wonder that there was a wave of Me Too Android apps that came up shortly after this feature was shown off at launch, but few matched the hardware and software magic that Apple has pulled off. If anything, one wishes that the dynamic island had a lot more adoption from third-party apps, which has changed in recent times with the iOS 16.1 update, which rolled out recently. This brings in support for live activities so that apps like Uber, ESPN or Swiggy could really create their own use cases for this feature, such as how far away your meal delivery is. This is when it will get really interesting, and I'm genuinely excited at the prospect of apps developing on this feature. Now, Apple's been on top of the video game from the past several years, but it's persisted with a finely tuned 12-megapixel camera since the era of the iPhone 6s. Time to shake things up, as the pros this year get a brand new 48-megapixel main camera sensor, which aside from the extra resolution, allows Apple to crop into the image optically to deliver a new 2x optical zoom. The bigger sensor allows Apple to do what most premium Androids do: use pixel binning to cluster 4 pixels into one, allowing each set of 4 pixels to collect more light and improve image quality. Of course, Pro users can switch to the Pro RAW mode to capture the full 48-megapixel shots for fine-grained control in post-processing, but at the cost of huge file sizes. This lines up alongside the 12-megapixel 3x zoom and the 12-megapixel 120-degree ultra-wide, and another first, a 12-megapixel selfie shooter with autofocus, alongside Apple's new photonic engine image pipeline, the latter which uses multiple captures with each image to improve overall textures, colors and detail levels, both in bright and dimly lit conditions. And the results speak for themselves. Whether you're shooting in good light or middling light, photos show a marked improvement in detail and handling exposure than even the excellent iPhone 13 Pro. Colors were true to life, capturing the scene and more importantly the mood of the scene accurately. In low light, the camera impresses with its ability to show colors without losing out on detail. The little loss in detail in extremely low light images are about par for the course for the best smartphone cameras out there, and the iPhone 14 Pro Max certainly belongs in that list. And it's not just the main sensor that's impressive. Even the ultra-wide is sharper around the edges and distortion is kept to a minimum. Close in to a subject and the ultra-wide switches to an excellent macro mode. The 3x telephoto improves on the previous generation as well, with images that show up less noise and more detail, but we still have some way to go before it matches up to the periscope zoom levels of the competition. Videos are expectedly top-notch, and the new action mode and upgrades to cinematic mode give pros even more versatility when framing and shooting their shots. Performance is rarely a discussion point on the flagship iPhone, and the new A16 Bionic chip extends the power efficiency and the performance gains over the A15 Bionic that powered last year's iPhones. Games like Call of Duty Mobile ran without a hitch, and the 6 GB of memory kept things multitasking smoothly. You don't end up thinking about performance quite as much on the Pro Max, simply because the phone is up and ready to deliver no matter what the ask is. Battery life in my testing is a shade less than the previous iPhone 13 Pro Max, but it still saw me till the end of a heavy workday with about 15 to 20% left in the tank. As much as I enjoyed the always-on display, the slight amount of battery anxiety it induced meant that I kept it off when I knew I'd be out and about on long days. With the always-on display, dynamic island and considerable camera upgrades, there are a lot of improvements this year, although not enough in my opinion to compel a 13 Pro user to upgrade. And the clear line that divides Apple's regular and Pro iPhones is deeper in the sand than ever. The Pros really do justify the Pro moniker this year. While you or I will enjoy the improvements and the delightful touches around the dynamic island, it's the creative pros who will really stand to benefit from the upgrade. We hope you enjoyed our thorough review of the iPhone 14 Pro Max and keep coming back for more such tech videos.